Cowansim have a pretty good reputation in the helicopter sim community for producing some good quality modules. Yes, when the 500E and H125 were first released, they were a little twitchy, but that seems to have been resolved over time, and the 500E has had a major update. And with similar updates coming out for their other modules, it seems Cowansim have been listening to feedback from the community and actually doing something about it, which is good news for us helicopter simmers. And now they've released this, the Robinson R66, and personally I think it's fantastic. It was released on New Year's Day while I was on holiday in the middle of nowhere with no internet, and therefore not able to download it right away. However, it is now available on cowansim.com, and as usual you'll find a link in the description. Being a Cowansim module, it of course comes with more liveries than you'll know what to do with. And while I haven't inspected each one of them, the ones I have looked at are all at the usual good quality you would expect from Cowansim. Unlike the H125 and 500E, there aren't endless add-on options. While I found these a nice novelty on the 500E and the H125, I can't say I use them routinely. So I can't say I really miss them, but maybe others will. The weights and balances pages has been trimmed down to just adding passengers, luggage, doors and the floats. The doors can also be hidden or displayed using the click spots. You also get a choice of 3 different console layouts, which I quite like, as well as a choice of different GPS systems. There's also an optional window in the roof, and a window sun visor, which is handy when you're flying somewhere sunny. There's also this handy little checklist card if you need some guidance getting it started. Cowansim do like their helicopters have a realistic startup, and it seems the R66 is no exception. As usual, start the battery and strobe. Be sure to turn on the ignition or it won't start no matter how many times you press the starter, and you feel like an idiot when you work out why. When you're ready, press and release the starter and watch the RPM. When it reaches 15, you need to push the fuel cutoff knob in before the oil pressure reaches 150. Once it's making engine type noises, you can start to roll the throttle in and turn on your alternator and avionics and anything else you may want for the flight. Okay, let's get this thing in the air. You'll need some left pedal, and it likes to pitch forward and take off, so a little bit of backstick. This is where, in my opinion, Cowansim have really got things spot on. It's really quite easy to manoeuvre in a hover, not because the flight model is too basic or because it's loaded with assists. I've flown a few sim helicopters like that and it feels very different. This R66 responds and behaves in the way a helicopter should, without the twitchy behaviour that often accompanies trying to make the handling more realistic. It feels stable and you're not fighting the controls the whole time. One of my biggest pet peeves with the H125 and 500E was that when you land in the water you got this rather ugly cut-up box in the water around the floats and you couldn't taxi on the water. So let's see what happens when I try to touch down in the water in the R66. First of all, make sure you've armed the floats. Don't worry if you've not added them in the weights and balances page, arming them will add them anyway. As we touch down, the floats deploy, although disappointingly without the inflating sound you got on the other helicopters. In fact, it sounded rather like landing on solid ground. However, I'm pleased to see that there's no ugly cut-up box. This looks much cleaner. While I'm landed, I'm going to add some more fuel. I started off with the default 50%, but it does seem to get through it rather quickly. But can I taxi? If I give it some collective and pitch forward, we still just tilt forward like we would if we were on land. To be honest, I rather expected this to be the case. This, I think, is a symptom of the Asobo flight model and how it interacts with the ground or water. I've not yet found a way to attract the floats when I take off. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a way to attract the floats, as there was on Cowansim's previous helicopters, so it's entirely possible that I just haven't found the right click spot yet. But it's not immediately obvious, at least not to me. Okay, so it looks good. It's got some nice features and it handles well. But will it break if abused? Let's try some of the usual aerobatics to see how it responds. The aggressive handling causes the torque to spike and the low RPM wall to sound. Clearly it doesn't like this kind of flying, but it recovers quite well and there doesn't seem to be any damage. So what happens if I maxed out the torque? If I yank the collective all the way up and try to maintain flight, the alarm goes off again. But I can hold like this for quite a while without the engine braking, so it would seem actually I can't brake it, short of actually crashing it into the ground. So let's weigh up the pros and cons. Pro: Cowansim have done some great fine tuning of the flight model and it handles beautifully. Con: using the Asobo flight model means accepting some limitations like not being able to taxi on the water and not having access to the autopilot that the R66 would normally have. There is a button on the side clip for the autopilot, but it's not currently operational. Pro: it doesn't brake if you abuse it. Con: it doesn't brake if you abuse it. While it's nice to know that you get away with doing dumb stuff in this thing, it does also detract from the realism of it. Pro: it looks fantastic. Con: it does seem to get through fuel really quickly, so maybe an issue for longer flights. Pro: the gauges are nice and clear in VR. Con: there's still no VR zoom. Why is there so rarely VR zoom implemented in third-party modules? All in all, I really like this helicopter. I'd go as far to say it's probably one of the best helicopters I've flown in MSFS. Certainly the best helicopter I've flown this year, in January 2024. But it's certainly set the bar pretty high for the rest of the year. While it's not perfect, the good bits are really good. And that's about it for this video. If you like helicopters, then there's a very good chance that you're going to like this. And if you like this video, please go ahead and do the usual like and subscribe stuff. Until next time, fly safe.